Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time today to join me for a formative assessment PD. Today's focus will be formative assessment and strategies and tools that will help you differentiate in the classroom. My name is Tony Marabito. If you have any questions or want any help with anything that I will be going over today, please reach out. My email is here at the bottom of the screen, marabitoa@cliu.org, and I will get back to you as quickly as I can. So the goals for today, I want to go over what exactly is formative assessment, what does the research say about formative assessment and why it's so important, why should we use it in our classrooms as an assessment, and what does formative assessment look like, specifically with a few tools that I will go over. So I will be going over a lot of tools at the end, so just bear with me, and then if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. All right, I want to start here with a quick quote. A parent teaching a child to cook would never say that was 74%. Instead, the parent would watch, demonstrate, and allow the child a chance to get better. These acts of mindful nurturing and guidance are examples of natural learning, and we perform them instinctively. So I always like to reference, my father owns a pizza shop. I've been making pizza since I was about 4 or 5, and he would never say, that was about 74%. He would tell me exactly how to improve and what to work on, and that's hopefully what we are doing in our classroom. And that's kind of what I want our focus to be when dealing with formative assessment. From that formative assessment, you then can differentiate, group your students, and this could be used pre-K to 12. All right, so what exactly is formative assessment? Let's start here. It describes an approach to teaching and learning that measures a learner's progress throughout, during the period of time that the student is working towards mastery. So this is constant check-ins with the student, like I said, at all age levels, and you're just checking in to make sure that they are understanding what content is being taught. Anytime teachers collect evidence about what a learner knows, now this is evidence that you can just make through observation, or it can be grades. And then lastly, used to make decisions about what should be taught next. So sometimes as teachers, we get so caught up with, this is the task I need to teach today. However, it should be, this is what our students need to master, and what should I do next to help them master? So what is formative assessment? It is student focused. It is instructionally informative and during and throughout instruction. What it's not is an end of unit evaluation or a textbook test. It is not an evaluation of mastery. It is not used after instruction, and it is not state testing. This is constant check-ins to gauge where your students are with the current content that is being taught. I would like to show this short video. It is an interview with a few teachers on how they feel they use formative assessment in their classrooms. I know it is more geared towards elementary students, but that's okay because formative assessment is the same and can be used at all levels. So here's the video.
When I think about formative assessments, I think of a way to check to see if students are understanding the content that you're teaching.
Formative assessment is more like, not like the standardized test and keeping scores, and it's like a quick check to find out how the kids are doing.
Almost every time I assign a formative assessment, I catch a misconception.
It really takes the guessing game out of summative assessment. I know what my kids are going to get when it comes time for the final test, because throughout the whole teaching process, I have been doing formative assessments. So I know what their strengths are, I know what their weaknesses are, and hopefully I've hit those weaknesses, so everything is going to be strong when it comes time for us to do our actual test.
The students are now aware that we will have to do a formative assessment before they're dismissed, so they have come to expect it.
I think a lot of teachers are afraid of formative assessments because they think that it sounds like something that's so formal, but really they're just learning the concept, and this is your chance to help them in that process. It's like the hand-holding part of learning. It really makes learning successful for everybody.
So there are a few things I wanted to point out there before we move on to the research. One of the teachers mentioned pointing out strengths and weaknesses. So it is a very informal check of strengths and weaknesses, and then you can kind of gauge your lesson from there If you're teaching a concept like long division and half your students do not understand it, you're not just going to move on to the next topic. You're going to identify the students that need more help, and then differentiate for them, put them in groups, have the students that are already proficient at this help other students. So it's a lot of informal check-in. I kind of like the one statement that the teacher said as far as hand-holding part of the learning and helping the child master rather than just searching for a grade. So those are the 2 points I really wanted to hone in on and just focus on going forward. So why use this formative assessment? Does it even work? Well, I have a few citations here. Formative assessment can make a difference across all learning levels. Formative assessment effect size is between 0.4 and 0.7, the equivalent of going from 50th percentile to 65th percentile. And where do these effect sizes mean? Well, 0.4 is 1 year's growth. So obviously using formative assessment in the Haiti work is going to help your students grow that 1 full year. And then here's some other data. Formative assessment methods could increase the speed of learning by up to 400%, with much of the effect attributable to gains by struggling students. So feedback is another huge piece that we will look at as well. But research shows that checking in with your students, not just giving them final exams and tests at the end of the content, is really, really beneficial. And you need to kind of stop and engage the classroom and, inform your instruction from there. All right, so the 3 main essential principles of formative assessment is that it is student focused, it should inform your instruction, and it is very much outcomes based. Well, how is it student focused? Well, formative assessment helps teachers consider that the student's learning needs and styles and adapt instruction accordingly. Like I gave the example before with long division, you will not just teach long division and then move on. You're going to make sure that your students try it out, practice it, become proficient at it, and you're going to check in along the way. Next, track individual student achievement. So by doing these formative assessments and checking in, and you're taking the pulse of your classroom, so that child A might still not be understanding and child B can move forward. So when you're doing your groupings or you're doing small group instruction, you're going to change the way you teach, and that's what formative assessment helps to drive. And then lastly, provide appropriately challenging and motivational instructional activities. So even if your scope and sequence says you should spend 1 full math course on a certain subject, but your students get it within the first 5 to 10 minutes, you shouldn't just beat the dead horse per se. You should move on and see what your students really need. All right, instructionally informative. It provides a way to align standards, content, and assessment, allows for a purposeful selection of strategies, embeds assessment in the instruction, and guides instructional decisions. So having students participate, you checking in on them throughout the lesson, it should really inform your instruction and where you should go from there. It is outcomes-based, so it emphasizes learning outcomes, makes goals and standards transparent to students, provides clear assessment criteria, closes the gap between what students know and their desired outcomes, and then uses data to provide valuable feedback. So you can always point back to data if you're keeping track of these formative assessments, but you do not have to keep track of all data. You can just take the pulse of your room and move forward depending on how well your students are doing. All right, so a very important part of formative assessment is the feedback that you provide. So feedback can be very, very powerful for students, and it should be used after you take the pulse of your classroom. So students appreciate that it is aimed at reducing the gap between where they are and where they need to be. This helps students know what success looks like, and when it is focused on providing them information on to where to go next, the students feel very much empowered. So those should be your 3 focuses when giving feedback. Here, I won't read to you the level of feedbacks, the examples, and level of effectiveness, but if you want to take a few seconds here, there's a few different types of feedback: corrective feedback, process feedback, and self-regulation feedback. So you'd like pause here and take a look, you may. I love these 7 things to remember about feedback. I will just read you a few of the 7 things to remember. Number 1, feedback is not advice, praise, or evaluation. Feedback is information about how we are doing in our efforts to reach our goal. I really enjoy number 3, the feedback students give teachers can be more powerful than the feedback teachers give students, so you have to be receptive to that as well. When we give a grade as part of our feedback, students routinely read only as far as the grade. So make sure, that everything that you're doing in class is not just for a grade, but to help the students learn, and that's what formative assessment is. So we'll continue on here. All right, let's talk about rubrics. Pros of rubrics: when designed well and used by students during the project creation process, they provide useful targets for exemplary work. The cons of a rubric scores are often converted to grade percentages, which may unfairly represent the levels of student understanding. So going in the next few slides here, we'll take a look at a few rubrics. Most teachers do use rubrics, and it is a great place to start with students when assigning a project or something of that matter, but we'll really dive into some rubrics that have been very, very useful. So here are a few recommendations for rubrics. Number 1, design rubrics with student input. Number 2, use single point rubrics to promote student self-assessment. And number 3, use only when the use of a rubric will support continued learning, not just calculate a score. So there's one resource here I really want to point out, and it's the single point rubric. I want to show you an example of that. This right here would be an example of a single point rubric, and we have the criteria right in the middle. So standards for performance, and then you have only 2 columns: the concerns column, or areas that need work on the left-hand side, and the advanced column, evidence of exceeding standards. So this is setting up if the student is performing right on par, then you would not need to fill in the areas of concerns, and they might be advanced in some areas. However, instead of giving a 1, 2, 3, and 4, what does that really mean to your student other than just that grade again? So this is specific feedback that the teacher can provide. So your concerns areas that need work. So maybe it's in their presentation, or maybe it's in whatever category that you choose, but you're giving specific feedback as opposed to just 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's just one example, and I'll leave these resources in the slide deck for you that you can go through. This is just one I found really neat. When I was teaching 4th and 5th grade, I was very much just using the 1, 2, 3, 4 rubric style, and it really didn't mean that much. And all feedback I was giving was a verbal feedback that the student might even forget by the time they get back to their seats. But if you're having a concerns column and an advanced column, then you're setting them up for success because they know exactly what they need to work on, and they can look back and use that as evidence. So I hope that's helpful to you, and you'll check out those rubrics. I want to walk you through a formative assessment cycle right here. So we'll start with number 1, objective goals and standards, and I have an example underneath. Differentiate fact from opinion in written text. So this could be anywhere from grade 4 to grade 9 or 10. Formative strategy for your signaling response to sentences read by the teacher. Simple, put your hand up, hand down, if it's fact or opinion. Then we move on to targeted instruction. Identify points of fact as contrasted with expression of the author's opinion. So formative strategy, corners activity, fact and opinion. One student in each group presents the group's opinion. So you do your corners either at your desk or standing in the classroom. Informed teaching, teacher gives concrete examples of how writers extend fact into opinion. So your strategy, small group activity, students create a color-coded T-chart with facts on the left and opinions on the right. And then data analysis, respond to data and provide feedback. Teacher uses data gathered to chart individual and group learning outcomes, target areas of misunderstanding, and teacher adjusts instruction as needed based on previous data. So the whole time you are just digging a little bit deeper. You're starting individual, or a large group, and then small group, and then you're getting down to the individual students. And then you can change your teaching practice based on that. So this is how you can differentiate throughout your lessons. And this is just one example, starting with fact and opinion text. All right, so I felt that this would be a little more helpful during these times of having asynchronous learning activities and synchronous. So asynchronous, read and take notes, watch a video, listen to a podcast, explore a resource given by the teacher, engage on online discussions, practice and review, research and explore, reflect, and document learning. So this could be when students are maybe in a hybrid model and they're at home that day, or even when they're working on them by themselves at their own pace, you can focus on the asynchronous. Now, synchronous, when you're together, you can work on building community and relationships, lead interactive modeling sessions, differentiate instruction for small groups, personalize. These are all the things that you can do synchronously or when you're all together. So I think that graphic is pretty helpful. All right, so we have come to the portion of this PD where there are a lot of apps. Now, I gave you the background of formative assessment, the research behind it, why we should use it, and how to use it. Now, I will show you a few apps. I will walk you through them very briefly because this could be a whole presentation in and of itself for each individual app or program. But I just want you to think, as I'm going through this, how you could use this in your classroom, and then maybe one or two apps that you'll use in this upcoming week or month. All right, so my first 4 apps here will deal with Google for Education assessment ideas. So we're going to go over Google Forms, Flippity, classroom questions, and then a Google site. I have used all of these in my classroom, and I'm very effective. And if you already have a Google login, and they interact directly right with your Google account. So let's start with Google Forms. I'm sure most of you know how to use Google Forms already. You can create quizzes, surveys. You can create the rubrics on here, even those single point rubrics, interactives, and data collections. So I do have a form right here. So this is just one that I created prior to the holiday break. Practice Christmas movie quiz. Take the student email address, the first name, last name, and then it's just a simple multiple choice and very easy. 5 questions, shouldn't take the student very long, but you're taking the pulse of your whole class. So if you see the data that comes back from this quiz, which is on the next screen here, you can export it right to your spreadsheet. You can see, well, this question, a lot of students did not get this correct, so I'm going to spend some time the next class going over that. So just a very efficient way of collecting some data, having some hard data in front of you, and being able to guide your instruction from there. Then how do I differentiate? Well, you could have the students that got question 3 wrong in one group, the students that got question 4, so on and so forth, however you deem necessary. But that's just another way that you can use the data to differentiate your instruction in the classroom. Flippity is a great website that has a lot of different tools. And if you already have a few things created in the Google platform, you can easily move it right over to Flippity. So Flippity gives you flashcard accessibility, the random wheel generator, a scavenger hunt, and there's a few things that you can manipulate and change to your own liking. If you already have those spreadsheets created, you can use these. Each one of these different activities has a demo, so you can see what it looks like. And then it gives you the instructions, and then you can easily download the template. One that I used a lot was the Flippity quiz show. So I can give you that demo. You create this, students can work on it together, or you can play it as a class. You can do this synchronously or asynchronously. You can do it on a Zoom, however you see fit. So I just wanted to show you this tool. If you are not comfortable with spreadsheets and you just want to enter some of your information here, you can put all of your information in this box if you're working on vocabulary or anything like that, and then you can create a game directly by clicking on this screen. So there's a lot of different activities that you can use through Flippity that would be pretty useful and very easy for you to use and not take too much time to create. So that is Flippity. Google Sites portfolio creation. So students can easily make a Google site and put in all their work for their particular class. So one example that I've heard the teachers have used this for is a science class. And they create a Google site that has their name on it and their science class, and every unit they're creating a new page. So if you're going over landforms, they create a landform page, and they It's just a place where they can keep all the information that they have learned and any projects that they have completed, whether it be on Google Slides or a Google Doc, and it's just all in one place. Great to use at conferences, and a very easy way for you to check out exactly what they have learned throughout the chapters or throughout the unit or throughout the semester which you're teaching. And this can be applied to any subject matter. And it's just a real snapshot of what the students have learned and what they've created. All right, just so a few other apps before we get started here. Public service announcement. You can pause and read that if you wish. All right, so I do have a nice little graph here that goes over a few different tools. So these are the game tools: Kahoot, Quizzes, and Quizalize. I've used all of these in the classroom as well. They do require some work ahead of time, but there's also a data bank for most of these, and you can kind of personalize it to yourself, and you can play this in the classroom or online as well. We have some video tools. Flipgrid is one of my favorites, as is EdPuzzle. Screencastify, more so used as a screencasting and streaming device. So you are creating a video and then sharing that with your students. And then board tools. I'm a huge fan of Jamboard, where all students can kind of collaborate together. Padlet was great until they started charging for it, but you do get 3 free walls. So you are able to use that. And then Lino is another version of Padlet. All right, so as we go through here, I just want to show you a quick example of each. Like I said, each one of these tools could be its own professional development. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Feel free to email me. So let's start with Kahoot. Kahoot is an instructor-led or self-paced game. You can integrate Google Classroom or other LMSs as well. I will take you, go back to Kahoot here. Let me take you to the Kahoot website. This is my Kahoot account, and you can log in right through Google. These are the 2 that I have recently created. This was a story book that I read to a group of first graders, and I came up with some questions. We played together along with that. So they had a great time with this. You can create your own from scratch if you wish, or you can click on the Discover tab up here. And if you're working on something, a certain content area, you can just type it up in this box up here. Let me just put, I'm very math focused today here. Multiplication facts, you can see what somebody else has already created. You can check it out, and then you can edit it on your own. It can be become your Kahoot, and the kids love playing this game, and it can be used at all levels. I was even visiting the NFL Pro Football Hall of Fame, and there was a auditorium type area that they use this for adults to go over football trivia. So again, all ages can use this. All right, so then we go to Quizalize, or Quizzes. Very similar to Kahoot. I really like Quizzes because you can do it live with your class like Kahoot. However, Kahoot does not offer the homework version. So homework is pretty new to Quizzes, and this is ideal for a homework assignment. You can set up a deadline up to 2 weeks into the future. Students can game automatically and just kind of play at their own pace. So they're not competing against other students per se, but they're doing this as a homework assignment. So if I go to quizzes.com, this is what your opening page looks like. You can search for other lessons that are already created. So, you know, PSSAs are coming up soon. So I can type in science PSSA. I'm looking through what other people have created. Here is a 6th grade PSSA science prep. Here's a 4th grade. So I'm just going to click into that to see what they are, what the questions are. So I can read through the questions. I can save this, copy and edit it to make it my own, and then I can start a live quiz if I'm, you know, with my students synchronously, or I can assign it as homework, and then the students can complete this at their own time and at their own pace. So you can use this as a formative assessment, because then you can use that data and see kind of where they're stumbling and go back and address that the next time you see your students or the next time you teach that next lesson. So just another tool, very easy to use. Don't recreate the wheel here. Just look for what other people have created and use that as a starting point for your formative assessment. So just another important app, and I've heard some great things about quizzes as well. Most importantly, it's free. You can share it directly to Google Classroom and other LMS platforms too, which is very nice and easy for your students.
I wanted to come on.
All right, so the next is Quizzolize. Quizzolize is very similar to quizzes. You can build a question set just like in Kahoot. And another great app to use synchronously with your whole class, or you can also send it out as homework, just like quizzes. So it looks exactly like quizzes. This is my main page. I can see what's popular right now. It's separated by content area. I'm just going to choose order of operations here. It gives you the skill, the grade level, the questions. Again, you can edit it. You can create your own. You can start a class game or give as homework. So again, just another resource that you can use that's already mostly created for you, or you can create your own quiz. So I give you 3 of the interactive gaming ones, and now I want to move over to Flipgrid. Flipgrid is probably my favorite app, and I'm sure that you've used it before as well. I gave a few links here that you can feel free to click on, but basically what Flipgrid can be used for is I used it for math problems because I wanted to hear what my students' thinking process was. So I would put a multiplication problem up on the board. The students would have to create a video explaining step by step how they were going to solve this multiplication problem. So you can assess what the students understand. You can kind of course correct, and then you can kind of get a little look behind the curtain of how they're solving problems and where you might help them out a little bit more. So without clicking on Flipgrid, I provided you a few links for you to explore a little bit. Here's a few keynotes that are new to Flipgrid. There are different boards and backgrounds now. Now you have graph paper and lined and dotted paper. You can also have split screen with your student's face on one side and the whiteboard on the other. There's different frames and stickers. The students just love using Flipgrid because it's very much like a Snapchat, and they really enjoy using it. EdPuzzle, another great resource. Again, this could be a whole nother PD, but EdPuzzle allows you to take a video, pause the video, crop, annotate, add voice inserts, and put in questions. So it will not move forward until the student actually answers a question. So you can really formatively assess them by making sure that they're paying attention to each little part of each video. And again, there are tons out there that are already created for you. I don't want to waste your time by logging in and showing you the different pieces of that. There are plenty of tutorials that I put here on the screen. Jamboard is my favorite as far as whiteboards go because students can interact together. You can put a topic up there and have students draw in real time right with you. Students can collaborate on different boards. You can create up to 20 boards. This is also free. It works right with the Google Suite, so the students can log directly in with their Google account. Just another way to get collaboration going and get discussion going, and being able to see student work is just vital when you're trying to differentiate and assess what your students already know. Padlet, I'm sure everybody's seen this Padlet tool. Again, 3 free walls with your account. You create the Padlet and send out the link, and you could say something like, if I were using this today for you, I would say, name 3 apps that you will use and why you think they could be beneficial to you in your classroom. And then you could get your own sticky note. It would have your name, and you can put in your input, and then it creates one big wall. So it's a great app for collaboration. Same with Lino, very similar to Padlet. And there's some more instructional videos here if you'd like to dive a little deeper. More for you to explore: Mentimeter, Pear Deck, Formative, Nearpod. There's so many tools out there to take assessment to the next level if you wish to dive into that. But I just wanted to provide you with kind of an overview of some of the apps and different tools that I like to use. Here's another great website. It's called Edutopia, and it gives you 53 different ways how to assess from KWL charts to 3-2-1s to outlines to quick writes to conferences. And this, again, any level, K to 12. So here's 53 other ways that you can assess and then allow yourself to differentiate based on the data that you're receiving. So some takeaways I hope that I got through to you were emphasizing the learning outcomes, making goals and standards transparent, provide clear assessment criteria, close the gaps between what students know and their desired outcomes, and then provide feedback that is actionable and relevant. Thank you. If you have any questions, I know I went through a lot of tools there in a very short amount of time. So please feel free to reach out. Again, I just want you to take away that you should be assessing your students throughout the day, multiple times, taking the pulse of your classroom and then teaching based on that, not just teaching to content, which I know we have to cover a lot. However, make sure your students are mastering the topic before you're moving on. Thank you again. Please, any feedback would be greatly appreciated. And don't be afraid to reach out. I'd be more than happy to help you out through any of the tools or through anything that I went over today. Again, thanks for joining.